What's up everyone, Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. So another one that came out on the 4th of March was the sophomore album from Hath, All That Was Promised. This comes out on Willowtip Records. This band formed in 2014 in New Jersey. Their debut full length of Rot and Ruin was definitely kind of a sleeper for me in 2019. It just kind of came out of nowhere and just fucking hit me. And honestly, I was kind of surprised that it was a US band because it sounded so fiercely European. But this new album is a little bit different. Now, when I went to the Metal Archives to actually look in on this band in terms of their profile, I know I had looked at it before, but it seemed like the style had changed because this is now described as progressive blackened death metal. I think it was just described as death metal or progressive death metal, maybe even melodic death metal before, but I don't remember blackened being in there. But I've reviewed a lot of albums, I've gone over a lot of bands, I could just be forgetting. But the blackened element, I think, is much bigger on here. This album is notably a bit different than the debut. I think, again, the scope is bigger, there are more elements at play, and you hear this subtle shift right away in the opening track, The Million Violations, which, this is New Jersey, we could be talking about the EPA violations, and you know, that's got a bit of a rep, but I don't think it's about that. This song opens up very soft and subtle, there's a really cool build to it, and then it goes into this giant riff, and then quiets down again before absolutely just exploding. Lots of black metal distance. The production here is very layered, especially when it comes on the guitars. It sounds like there's like 5 or 6 track guitars on here, and it kind of creates this wall of melody and dissonance, and then you have sort of alternating vocal styles. You have deep growls, you have more blackened shrieks, and the blackened shrieks seem more pronounced this time. And then you even have some clean vocals that pop up. But honestly, this is centered on a lot of just killer riffing and great melodies, and again, guitar interplay. Like, you have great leads on top of the chunky rhythms, you have majestic solos, and all these proggy flourishes, but not like proggy like Dream Theater, more proggy like Rivers of Nile and Black Crown Initiate, like that style of progressive death metal meeting up with black metal a bit. It's very complex and very technical, but it's also, again, very hook-laden, and they do like to bring in really clever melodies. And the guitar playing on here is kind of all over the place just in terms of the wide array of different styles they like to bring in. While you get more like progressive tracks that sort of include all of their elements, like The Million Violations and Casting of the Self, which is similarly built. You know, it has the softer intro, the big explosive section before it quiets back down and then just flat out explodes once again. And when this band likes to explode, Jesus Christ, their drummer is fucking flying on here. There are blast beats galore, really just awesome turnovers. This dude is a monster, and he was also responsible for mixing this one and their previous album. So way to go on the multitasking, but man, this drum performance is absolutely insane. Lots of just nuts turnovers, blast beats, cool slow grooves, really cool breakdowns and syncopations. It's just very rhythmically fucking driven. And while a lot of this kind of shows a bit of a change in their sound, like if you listen to Rot and Ruin, it is definitely more aggression forward. Like, there's loads of melody and there's definitely some atmosphere on it, but it feels just more about going for the faster, chunkier riffs kind of all the time, and then like atmosphere and like the, you know, atmospheric tremolo riffs are kind of secondary. This one kind of brings those to the forefront, but they do not forget how to just beat you over the head with just some chunky, nasty riffs. Lithopedic, at least I'm like 60% sure that's how that word is pronounced, is probably one of the most death metal centric songs on here. This opens up with like this kind of creepy buildup into these giant single chugs over blast beats, and I really like that kind of shit. Like, something about that just makes it sound heavier than hell, because it's just these nasty chugs over this rapid blast beat and deep death metal vocals. Like, we're talking almost blackened bloodbath on here. And when you get down to the verses on here, it just kind of slows down to that, well, Morbid Angel slow, where the double bass is just fucking flying, but it's a kind of a slower groove, and you get these cool little incantationist pinch harmonics in there. This song is just so heavy forward. It is just all about the brutality right away, and it's kind of cool where it comes, because it's the 3rd track on here, and the first 2 kind of show off the more blackened side, the more ambient, more lush sound. Still heavier than hell, but this song is just aggressive and in your face. It changes up the syncopation later on in a breakdown where it kind of doubles the little chug list. So it goes from chunk, chunk, chunk to chunk, 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 chunk. And it's just this simple little chug, but it's somehow like the most brutal thing on this album. It is, I would say, probably the most heavy song on here amongst a whole bunch of other fucking insanely heavy songs, but this one just really stood out to me. And later on in the song Death Complex, they kind of bring back that single chug over the blast beats thing, but that song is definitely a little bit more on the atmospheric side, though it does bring back that just brutal heavy sound. A lot of this is about like song building, just in terms of like building tension, which was definitely on the first album, but I think they do it a little bit better here. Like there's definitely more atmosphere, there's definitely more of like this ethereal fucking feel to it. And I would say this is just a bit more moody with like different elements coming into play. Again, like more black metal this time. It can feel sinister and more dark and even doomy. The last track, Name Them Yet Build No Monument, has this very doomy, oppressive feel. But this song builds to a giant size fucking hook, all the while kind of maintaining the sinister atmosphere. And then I love the way this song closes too. It brings in this really cool breakdown that kind of feels like a bit of a nod to early Machine Head, like Burn My Eyes, especially the song Davidian with those, you know, cool little harmonic fucking notes that are in the opening. It has those in there, but it's employed in more of a death metal way, but I absolutely love it, and how they keep working this breakdown is just fantastic. And there's a lot of varied guitar work on here. Like there's tons of like very melodic leads and again more straightforward riffing, but in the song Iosis there's a section on there that kind of goes into like almost like a full bore Dillinger escape plan sort of freak out in terms of the guitars. Not necessarily the rhythms, it doesn't get too fucking wild there, but it just gets very atonal and it's like kind of has an odd meter to it. And Decollation has this really cool crawling atonal melody in it that just sticks out and just sounds creepier than hell. But occasionally this band does get a little too lost in trying to make this too layered with dissonant melodies. The song Death Complex, while I do really like that song, it is a particularly aggressive song. There is a section on there I kind of just get lost in, and not in a good way. I mostly start focusing on the fact that there are some sections that are just too distant, like they kind of overdo it. And there is a lead melody on top of this main riff here, and it just gets to be a bit much, and it goes on for, well, longer than I really wanted it to be there. And while it does all come together in these really awesome layers in terms of the guitars, this squawking dissonance just kind of grated on me a bit. And then sometimes the song structure is just a little odd. The title track on here, while I love it, like I love all the parts that are in it, it just feels arranged, maybe not in the best way. I like the opening of it. It's very moody, it's very dark. It kind of reminds me a lot of Cult of Luna. It just kind of has that sort of cold feel to it. And then it just flat out explodes into just brutality and tremolo riffs and blast beats. And I just think the way it built, it kind of happened too sudden. And then when the song ends, it kind of ends on this really cool, epic, groovy section that is just a little bit more slowed down. And it feels like that section at the end could have followed the beginning of it, and then it would have just built to that giant blast beat ending, and I think it probably kind of worked a little bit better. It just feels kind of oddly arranged. It's kind of like the musical equivalent of watching a Tarantino flick and not knowing, it's like, oh yeah, well, the beginning is the beginning, but the middle is the end, and then the end is actually the middle part. And you're like, oh, that seems needlessly confusing, but I still liked it. It's kind of that effect. I still like the song, but I just feel like it's oddly arranged. But overall, I really dug this, and I was a big fan of their debut, and I think this is, again, a bit of a transitional album, but there's not so much that has changed in here that it's not recognizable as Hath anymore. This still sounds just like them. It's just a little bit broader in scope. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. This is a solid album. I would say this is on par with the debut, but it's different. It's, you know, kind of its own thing. It's way more atmospheric. There's way more black metal elements on here. I think the song structures are a little bit more elaborate this time and a little bit more progressive. And I think overall this might be just a little bit more creative. I think the only real issue I have with this is occasionally it tries to do too much when it really doesn't need to. This band has excellent songwriting. The production's fantastic. The riffs are fucking great. The added atmosphere gives it a really just sort of intense, just hypnotic sort of feel sometimes. It's just trying to overdo like the dissonant sections. You don't always need that. In terms of a band broadening their sound and introducing new elements and just sort of expanding their sound, I think this is the way to do it right here. There's a lot more going on here, but it's still very much them. Like, you can tell their core sound is still very much intact. They're not trying to reach too far. And I think in terms of like dynamics, you can hear that they're pushing themselves as songwriters. This can bombard you with just brutality left and right, but it can also sort of soothe you and, well, I don't know, make you not want to walk into a dark room because, you know, they like a lot of that creepy ambience. This is a solid album. I strongly recommend you check this out if you're a big fan of the first one. I'm still reasonably sure you're going to really dig this one. It isn't so much of a change. You're going to like, whoa, what the fuck is this? That should not happen. I don't know what all was promised by the band when it came down to the themes of this album, but I can promise you, if you like brutal riffs, dissonant melodies, blast beats, and just solid songwriting, you will probably dig this, so definitely check it out. So, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. There will be a link down below if you'd like to help us out there. We also have a giveaway going on once we hit 10,000 subscribers, which we are at the 9,900 mark, so less than 100 to go. We will be giving away a t-shirt, which if you like our t-shirts, you can order them down at thrallsmetal.com, which will also be linked down below. But we are giving one of those shirts away, as well as an Alien Weaponry limited print of their last album, and a $100 gift card to Bandcamp, which you should always spend your money on Friday to help out the bands. All of this could be yours. All you have to do is comment on the video and you are entered. So here comes the part where I thank the living fuck out of you guys, because you guys fucking rule and we love doing this. We love that you seem to love that we love doing this. I don't know how that works. I think I've done this bit before, but it comes from the heart every time. Thank you guys so much. This has been such an amazing ride, and we love that it's just growing, and we've built this awesome community here, and we love that you are a huge part of it. So thank you all once again, and we will catch you later.